a dead man from a white oak tree. People sitting on porches thinking how things used to be.
Dark Night.
It's a dark night. Dark night.
And thank you once again for tuning in on this dark night, Friday, February 12th, 2024. And you're listening to another edition of Real Talk on 92.5 WLSD, The Vault. The Blasters were blasting coming in tonight.
The neighborhood was changing.
And this is the first show of the new year. Last week I was actually sick. I felt bad, felt under the weather. Was coming down with the flu, chicken pox, smallpox, all of those pox, everything I was coming down with. Just kidding. But I didn't feel well, so I did not do a show for you all last week. Much apologies. But the movie we were going to talk about last week, Jeremiah was going to be in with me, but he's still sick as well, so he'll be in a future episode. But tonight is the fantastic cult classic From Dusk Till Dawn. And this movie holds a very special place in my heart. It was one of the first movies like this that I had actually seen in the movie theater. I saw this movie 4 different times as a 16-year-old. And this is going to be a fun treat tonight, so I hope you all have seen this movie. And if you haven't, I think by the end of this episode, you will definitely want to go and rent and stream this film. So before we get into the show tonight, please go to our social media platforms. That's the Spotify, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Instagram, and the Facebook pages, The Other People's Show. Please go on there and like, subscribe, and leave notes, leave comments, and I will definitely get back to you. We have The Dark Place airing every Thursday, 10 p.m. It's also on demand on the WAXM website, as well as all the social media that we just mentioned. Got a little bit of a hiccups tonight, so I apologize about that. But tonight we're going to be talking about 2 criminals and their hostages unknowingly seek refuge in a truck stop populated by vampires with chaotic results. That is the film From Dusk Till Dawn in a nutshell. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the director, which was Robert Rodriguez. If you know action films, even in family-friendly films, you may know some of his films. He started off with a movie called El Mariachi, which is basically about a loner seeking vengeance upon his significant other that has been murdered. So a few years later, he made the transition to before we get into Desperado, El Mariachi was a film where Robert Rodriguez filmed and shot for $7,000. Not $7 million, but $7,000. And he was able to obtain some of this money to make this film by donating or charging his body for science. So he was up on the slab. He was able to get a couple $1,000s by doing some kind of science experiment with his body, which they paid him, and in return, he made his first film, El Mariachi. Now, that was kind of remade a couple years later. A loose remake starring Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek called Desperado, and that came out in 1995. And if you've seen that movie, it's a great action film. It doesn't aspire to be anything more than what it is, which is an action movie, which is a fun gunplay, and it is a great, it's a great first starring role for Antonio Banderas, because you have to think back in the early 90s, he was still coming into his own. He had some parts in Too Much, Never Talk to Strangers, Interview with the Vampire. So he was making waves, but this was 1995 was the year that Antonio Banderas broke out. He had Desperado, and then he also had a movie with Sylvester Stallone entitled Assassins, which he was the villain Miguel Bain in that film as well. So he was the hero in Desperado. And then Desperado, directed, like I said, by Robert Rodriguez. He goes from Desperado to the film we're going to talk about, From Dusk Till Dawn. We'll go a little bit deeper into his filmography. He did The Faculty. And if you remember The Faculty back in the late 90s, it had pretty much who's who of the up-and-comer actors and actresses. It had like Elijah Wood and Michelle Williams and what's the guy's name? Names often don't. I often don't forget names. Josh Hartnett, he was one that was in there. It also had Salma Hayek, Jon Stewart, Robert Patrick. So it had I know that person. It had a lot of those kind of things. So Robert Rodriguez was like an up-and-coming director as well. And then I never did really understand why he decided to actually go from the movies that he did. He did 3 straight Spy Kid films. Spy Kid 2, The Island of Lost Dreams, and Spy Kids 3D Game Over. So here was the director that had these, violent films, El Mariachi, Desperado, From Dusk Till Dawn, The Faculty, and then he jumps into these kid films. And I also forgot to mention that in 1994, there was a feature called 4 Rooms, and it had 4 different segments within each of the, the movie. And Robert Rodriguez directed one of those segments, as did Quentin Tarantino. And I have to be honest with you, I have never seen 4 Rooms. Tim Roth from Reservoir Dogs is in there. Madonna has a role in there. But it never seemed like something that I wanted to really go out and just rent. And I do remember picking up the video multiple times and almost renting it. But I never did rent it. So 4 Rooms is one that I've not seen. After the Spy Kid films, he got back into business with Johnny Depp and Antonio Banderas once again with Once Upon a Time in Mexico. And then in 2005, he did the classic, now classic, Sin City. And then he teamed up with Quentin Tarantino to do the Grindhouse films in 2007. Quentin Tarantino did his Death Proof, and Robert Rodriguez did Planet Terror. And then there was a couple of years where Robert Rodriguez had kind of just, he did another Spy Kids film. He did another Sin City film. He did a Machete, which was featured in the Grindhouse fake trailers. We just had Thanksgiving come out this past Thanksgiving, which was also a fake trailer. Well, Machete has had 2 films, Machete and Machete Kills. So we're backing all the way up to Robert Rodriguez's, technically his 3rd feature film, From Dusk Till Dawn. And like I said, not only does this movie, resonate within me as far as, cinema goes, it resonates with me as far as soundtracks go as well. Because this was a soundtrack that I still have the CD to this day. And this is a soundtrack that was on heavy rotation in my my sound system at the time. Here's a little bit of a Tito and Tarantula. And if you know this movie, you know what scene this is from. So this has it's got a fantastic cast. You've got Harvey Keitel, George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino, Juliette Lewis, Ernest Liu, Salma Hayek, Cheech Marin, Michael Parks, Kelly Preston, Tom Salvini, Danny Trejo, Fred Williamson, and Tito and Tarantula as the house band. So yeah, this has an eclectic group of actors and actresses, and they all shine on screen. Now you've got Harvey Keitel as Jacob. He's the preacher who has lost his faith. His wife, you discover, has been recently, lost her life in an automobile accident, and he's taken the kids on some kind of a vacation across Texas in this Winnebago that they've just purchased. But Jacob wants to stay at an honest-to-goodness bed. So they stay at this motel that the kids call a flop house. And the word flop house is said 3 times. It actually made me laugh rewatching it the other day. But they stay in this motel, and that happens to be where Seth and Richie Gecko are staying. Now, Seth and Richard Gecko are criminals who are trying to evade the law. They've killed multiple police officers. Seth has sprang Richie out of jail. Now they're trying to get across the border to meet up with one of Cheech Marin. He plays 3 characters in this movie, but he's trying to meet up with him at the rendezvous so they can go ahead and pay 30% to stay in the town of El Rey. So the criminals, as you can probably guess if you've not seen this movie, foil everything for this family of Jacob, a young Juliette Lewis, Ernest Liu, a Scott. And this is Ernest Liu's first film, his first movie. And he does a fantastic job. This would be cool to have on your resume as this being the first feature that you have been in. You know what I mean? It would be very cool to be like, this is the feature. And Ernest Liu has that to his name. So that's very cool. And to be honest with you, I do not know if Ernest Liu, his filmography. I don't know if he's been in many other things. Not really sure. But let's get into a few little facts of the film. I know a lot of people like to know the facts, some things that went on behind the scenes. So we have the humorous line, "No thanks, I've already had a wife," was improvised by George Clooney. Director Robert Rodriguez never intended it to be in the final cut, but after the studio included the line in the movie trailer, he felt obligated to put it in the film. Now, you probably have noticed, especially in the older days, that a lot of the things that were actually in the movie or in the trailer to the movie didn't make the cut of the movie. There were many, many times where you would see a scene in the movie trailer and it wouldn't be in the movie. And this was one of those lines where Robert Rodriguez was like, it's in the trailer. I didn't really want it in the movie, but it does work and it is kept in. And I think it works. I read a few of these facts, many, many times, so I knew them going into, watching the movie again. This was probably my, like I said, I saw it 4 times in the theater, and I've probably seen it at least, I would say I've seen this 10 to 15 times. From Dusk Till Dawn, 10 to 15 times, because it's a short movie. It's about 96 minutes, so it's a quick and it's a fun watch. So Salma Hayek did not have a choreographer for her dance, which actually was just the song, the Tito and Tarantula song that we were listening to. She's dancing with a snake, and she had a huge, I think it's like a huge python, and it's yellow, And it is, she said she was so fearful, but she had to do the scene, and there was nothing that she could do about it because there was no way that they could CGI a snake like this in 1996. So she was saying you cannot you cannot have, choreograph this dance because a live snake is why she said. So director Robert Rodriguez just told her to feel the music and dance to it. Rodriguez used the same tactic with Jessica Alba in Sin City. And I was really watching the Salma Hayek her dance as a Santanico Pandemonium. That's her character's name. And she's only in there briefly, but she does make a huge impact because when she's dancing with this snake, she's in this bar, this roughneck bar with all these lowlifes and truckers and bikers, and they're just they're there to have a good time. You can tell there's a lot of lowlifes and scum in the bar setting there. But all those people come together and they're fixated upon Salma Hayek as Santanico Pandemonium, and she's mesmerizing. And that is actually the scene that's going on during this song. So since there was so much blood and so much carnage, vampire and human carnage in the movie, Robert Rodriguez used green blood for the vampire blood to get the movie past the censors. It probably would have got a hard R, maybe even an X rating due to violence, had they not trimmed back the blood from red to green. Quentin Tarantino also used something similar in Kill Bill Volume 1, where there is so much excess blood and gore that at certain parts when Beatrix Kiddo is sword playing with the Crazy 88, it switches to black and white in that film for the exact same reason, to get past the censors. So this was when Quentin Tarantino first told Robert Rodriguez, how about let's make the blood green? Let's get past those censors and let's have some fun with this movie. There is a writer trademark, though, because Quentin Tarantino did write this film for $10,000. He was paid $10,000 for this script. But the fast food that Seth brings back to the hotel is a Big Kahuna Burger. And that also is featured in Pulp Fiction and an array of other Quentin Tarantino films as well. Now, at the time of this movie, George Clooney had been around in TV for quite some time. He had also starred in Revenge of the Killer Tomatoes with Sean Astin's dad, John. And my mother bought us this film, Revenge of the Killer Tomatoes, when I was younger. So I have seen that film, and there is a Revenge of the Killer Tomatoes song, which is kind of silly, to be honest with you. But it's a fun little, B movie, D movie, I guess you could say. But anyway, George Clooney was picked partly because he was doing ER, and Quentin Tarantino had actually directed an episode of ER, and he also liked the irony that Clooney had gone from saving people in the ER to a character who sends people to the ER. So that was kind of the irony that Quentin Tarantino liked in, talking about, hey, George, Quentin Tarantino wanted to actually do some more acting as well. And this was probably his highest profile acting job. And while he is the weakest link amongst the actors, he does a fair job as Richie Gecko. But George Clooney actually does a really, really good job, and it's kind of a shame that George Clooney didn't do any other roles quite like this. You know, that was kind of like, I really thought that he might turn out. I mean, he's done a lot of different roles. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? The Peacemaker, Batman and Robin. So he's done a lot of these type of films, but nothing quite like his first big screen adventure. And this is a great one. And in one of my my yearbook of that year, there were certain like questionnaires and things that we, I guess you filled out and stuff. So the yearbook, it has that my favorite actor of that year, 1996, was George Clooney. And it was solely for the reason of From Dusk Till Dawn. Solely. The budget was $19 million, and it made $25.8 million in the United States of America. Not sure about the worldwide gross, but it has spawned 2 sequels and a TV show of the same name. And it is a cult classic. It is a movie that, it's a very watchable movie. And the audience seems to like it, as did quite a few of the critics as well. So we have a Rotten Tomatoes score of 63%, audience score of 76%, and an IMDb rating of 7.2. So let's get into a little bit of the plot and the story of From Dusk Till Dawn. So as we said, it's about 2 criminals, Seth and Richard Greco, and their hostages. Their hostages being Jacob, Catherine, Kate, who is Juliette Lewis, Scott, and how they're trying to hang out at this. They're pretty much taking this family to get across the border, and it's a movie of two. It's 2 different movies in one. And I always, even to this day, I do prefer the first part of the movie. It's more of a thriller. It's a criminal thriller. Will these criminals get across the border and to the rendezvous with these hostages, or will they get shot, killed, or captured? What's going to happen? And there's some very tense scenes early in the movie. The opening scene where the Gecko brothers are in they're in like a gas and go type place in Texas. And there's like this little showdown they have between themselves and the clerk, Pete Bottoms. But, it's a great explosive opening. It's before the credits. And it sets the tone of the entire movie. So you think. It's like you've got the Mavericks on the soundtrack, but you also have ZZ Top. And as the Gecko brothers, as they get away to begin with, they get a hostage. Richie is a convicted. He's committed sex crimes in addition to killing officers. He's an offender, and his brother is not that. His brother is just a cold, hard criminal, and he couldn't let Richie rot away in jail, in prison. So we bust them out. They're on the lam. They take this lady hostage, a school teacher. Richie ends up having his way with her, then murdering her. Seth comes back with a big kahuna, and then he's like, none of this matters. But he's also mad because this is not who he is. This is not what he does. He's not sick. And Seth, that's what Seth says. That's what he says. So therefore, at this particular point in the movie, they're holed up at this motel, and that's when Jacob and Kate and Scott pull in that they want, they just need a night. Jacob needs a night in the bed. One thing leads to another, And the thing that leads to it, pretty much, you learn a little bit about that he is a pastor that's leaving his congregation. He's lost his faith. He's kind of went astray. And his kids are caught up in the middle of what's going on personally with Jacob and the passing of his wife, the passing of Kate and Scott's mother. So as they're staying in their room, minding their own business, here comes Richie knocking at the door. Me and my lady friend are needing some ice, but we don't seem to have an ice bucket. If it's not too much trouble, can we borrow yours? I'll bring it right back. He says something like that. So Quentin Tarantino or Jacob turns to get the ice bucket. Richie pulls out the gun, takes the family hostage, and here starts act number 2. Act number 2 is as they're trying to get across the border. They do get across the border. Cheech Marin actually has 3 small parts, 3 different characters in this film, which is kind of cool. He plays a patrolman. He plays someone that's at the bar, and he plays the guy at the end that Seth is meeting to go into the rendezvous, El Rey. So he has a triple duty. And the second act pretty much takes them to the point where they're getting across the border. They're inside the bar. And, you just had heard the song where they're, she's dancing. And then Act 3 is about to begin. So, really, Act 3 is a little bit longer than the most traditional acts, in a sense. Because 2/3 of this movie has been this heist thriller movie. And then, all of a sudden, it turns into something completely different. On its head, what I failed to mention is that during the opening scene, Richie gets shot in the hand. His hand's bleeding. He's actually able to look through his hand, in a fun throwback. And he wraps his hand in duct tape. Now, by the time that they're at the bar, his hand happens to still be bleeding as well. And as Santico Pandemonium is dancing and looking down, she happens to notice that his hand is still bleeding. Unbeknownst to everyone else, she sees this and she starts going toward Richie because she is a vampire. Huge revelation. Huge revelation. Now, after this happens, there's a few people inside the bar that are not vampires, but everyone else that seems to be in the bar are part of this. They turn. And the ones, excluding just a few that aren't vampires, are getting, getting bitten, getting killed, getting maimed, murdered. So they're left Jacob, Seth, Kate, Scott. Who else we got? We got Razor, Frost, and several people that are still alive. Now, obviously, you know that they're going to be whittled down to where there's only a few left. Those few being, Jacob, Seth, Kate. Everyone can die in this. Richie can die. The brother Scott can die. And it comes down to they have to put aside their differences. That Seth kidnapped them and brought them into this situation, all to get across and to get his brother safe. But now his brother's dead. Kate's father's gone. Kate's brother's gone. And it's only them two left against the rest of these vampires? Are they going to be able to beat the odds and survive the night? Because all this is sprung upon them. They don't know what's going on. One minute they're sitting, getting across the border, then make it to the bar, having a few drinks. Next thing you know, everyone's a vampire. I mean, can you imagine? Your family, if you're Kate, you're probably an 17, 18-year-old girl. Your family has been kidnapped. Now your father and your brother are gone. On top of your mom dying a few months ago on the highway. And not only has all that happened, and you're trying to save and defend your life against these undead vampires, but you don't even believe in vampires. You have to partner with the person that put you in the situation to begin with. So much is happening. So much is happening. So yeah, so that's basically the setup and the story and the plot of the movie. And, Kate and Seth, spoiler alert, they survive. And pretty much Seth gives Kate some money. Tells her what El Rey is when she says, do you want any company? And she's left to fend for herself. Family murdered. Family dead. Seth gives her probably, I don't know. I'm guessing probably $25,000. Go your own way. And she does. What can she do? So that is the plot in the story from Dusk Till Dawn. The characters, like I've said, we've kind of went into those a little bit. We've got Harvey Keitel, George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino. Even he does a pretty good job acting. Juliette Lewis, she does a fantastic job. And she shows like this full range of going from this timid, shy, just lost her mother to this kick butt female that is not going to let these vampires kill her. She has no choice. And then you've got Salma Hayek, Michael Parks, Kelly Preston, Tom Savini. Tom Savini actually did some, I think he did a lot of special effects for some of the Friday the 13th films, and he did some special effects for this movie as well. So he's a little bit of an actor, so they threw him in. And he has some fun gadgets, a fun gun that is actually reused from Desperado as well. It's used in that film, and it's used in this movie as well. And then you've got Danny Trejo, Fred Williamson, and John Hawkes. He does a good job as Pete Bottoms. At the very beginning of the film, he's very convincing in that role, and he does a fantastic job. It's a great setup, great dialogue, and great dynamic. I can't think of anyone else that would fit these roles as well as their cast. And since Quentin Tarantino was, pretty much responsible for the movie, the writing of the movie, I'm sure he had some hand in casting, because you have to think, he had the clout of Pulp Fiction and Jackie Brown, so he could pretty much do what he wanted to do. And I think that he picked out a great cast. I don't think there could be a better cast for these characters. Favorite scene? I don't know if I can really just narrow down my favorite scene of the film. I'll name a couple different scenes that I like really well. The opening scene is a fantastic scene. It's very tense. It's set up with Pete. He's behind the counter. The sheriff, Michael Parks, just comes in, and they kind of chit-chat as any, a regular would do. And you can get you get the sense already within the first 1 or 2 minutes that this police officer comes in every day and chit-chats with Pete, and they kind of tell, the stories of the day. Police goes in, uses the restroom, and leaves. That's pretty much the rapport that they have. And it starts off this way as well, but as the officer goes into the restroom, it pans over and you see that Seth and Richie have two females with guns pointed to their head. And then they approach Pete. And then they're like, you better get him out of here. Your best better get a lot better. That's exactly what they say. And then, pretty much there ends up, Richie is, you get the sense that Richie is trigger happy and he doesn't think clearly about what's going on. Because he, shoots the cop in the back of the head, which sets off the chain of events of him getting shot in the hand, later his demise by Salma Hayek's character due to the fact that she sees the blood in his hand still leaking down from the gunshot from this opening scene gun battle. So that's a really great scene. And I think all the scenes leading up until they get to the bar, I would have to say all that is my favorite scenes because I would like to see a movie. Now, I do like this movie. Don't get me wrong. It's really, really fun. It's enjoyable. It's unique. It's got great dialogue, great cast. But what I do wish in an alternate reality that they had continued the movie in the vein in which it was going. I wish I would have known what the movie would have been like, or if there was a version, even a script version, where the movie continued as a heist, bank robber, getaway thriller, and not transition into the vampire horror movie that it transitioned into. Now, I think that would be very interesting to see how that would be. I don't think that, as far as I know, there's not a copy of any script like that out there. But if there were, I would like to read it and just see how it would be different as opposed to what we actually got. Because what we actually got was something that, someone had mentioned on one of the comments that, they wish they could go back and rewatch this again for the first time. And I kind of feel that way as well. It would be interesting to go back and see certain movies again for the first time. And this would be one of those that I think that I would like to do. My least favorite scene, I don't think I honestly have a least favorite scene. I'm trying to sit here and think if I do. And I really don't. Even the scenes, because it's such a fast-paced film. It's not like there's any part of this film I feel that drags, because every part is it's like each part needs to be there in order for the rest of the movie to work, and that's not the way it is in all movies. There's no filler in this film, I don't think. I don't think there is at all. I think it's all neatly stacked blocks that actually form something. And I think that each piece is needed for the amount of seconds that it's needed. Because this movie is short enough to make you wish it were longer. And that's one of the beautiful things about it. Is because it's much better to have the audience wanting more than the audience to being like, that was a great film. I wish it was a little bit shorter. There's a few scenes in next week's film which I feel that way about. Doesn't diminish the film, doesn't diminish the way I feel about it or the quality of the film, but this is a film that it's packed together in a nice 96-minute, I think is what it is. Even if it's a few minutes longer than that, the time is perfect. It leaves you with that taste in your mouth that you still wish you could have just a little bit more. And it's that wanting more that makes the movie so great. Now, I wanted one of those as well. I wanted, maybe a few minutes longer. This movie was great, maybe another scene. But I never wanted to follow it enough to see some of the sequels. Because usually the sequels in this kind of a film, if it's not done by the original people, it's pointless to do. It could be great sequels. It could be great TV episodes spawned from the movie. But my initial investment was this group of characters was this actors and actresses, this director, so that's what I'm going to base my judgment upon, and I don't need to see other actors or actresses playing these roles because they didn't originate the roles, and these characters and these actors and actresses are these people on screen. No one else is going to fill these roles quite the way they did here. Score music, like I said at the very beginning of the show tonight, this was a soundtrack that I constantly had on rotation, constantly had the CD going, and I carried it all over the place. I actually still have the working CD as of now. It still works, it still plays, and it's still the original From Dusk Till Dawn CD. And I thought the cover of was really cool. So you've got George Clooney at the very top left of the cover. It says, from the creators of Pulp Fiction and Desperado. And right there, you should know anyway, if you know cinema, then you know what you're in store for. You know what the creative minds behind these two projects have done in the past. So those creative minds have come together to present you with this new story. And not only is it a new story, it's this soundtrack, this motion picture soundtrack. Then you've got the close-up face of Salma Hayek's character, kind of like this yellowish green glow. And then near the bottom left of the cover, you've got Richie Greco with a gun pointed out as well, and From Dusk Till Dawn. And in that, it's kind of like, looks like it's kind of ripped a little bit, like something with sharp claws has kind of ripped a little bit off of the cover, because you can't see all of George Clooney's name, you can't see all of Salma Hayek's name, because it's been ripped and clawed because she's a vampire. Here's a nice little tune. So yeah, I would say, if you go to Spotify, go on to Spotify and just check out From Dusk Till Dawn. You've got the Mavericks on there. You've got ZZ Top. You've got the Blasters. You've got Tito and Tarantula, and Stevie Ray Vaughan. It's a great soundtrack. And when I hear the soundtrack and the music, I see scenes from the movie in my mind's eye. So, originality. I think this is an original piece of cinema. It's pulp cinema. It's great B material, and it's fun. Now, obviously, is this a realistic scenario of things that could happen? It isn't. It's all make-believe. Movies are all make-believe. I'm not telling anyone something they don't know. But when you go into this movie, it does feel real. It's a great deal of detail. Screenplay writing from Quentin Tarantino, the little details, casting, everything seems to be lined up perfectly to create this unique film, this unique vision of these creative people. And you get the feeling that Dimension Films had put this movie out. And you get the feeling that they let Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino do what they want to do. And like I said, Quentin Tarantino just has come off of Pulp Fiction. He had Reservoir Dogs. And this is right before Jackie Brown. So he's able to do what he wants to do. And I'm really thankful that this is what he chose to do. I'm sure it would have been a little bit different had he just decided to direct and not just act in the film. But I'm glad that he was able to hand it over a little bit to Robert Rodriguez and let Robert Rodriguez put his little spin on this fantastic tale. I think it's a really fun movie. I think it's a great movie. And, I think it's very original and fun. So the poster, now the poster is a little bit different than the soundtrack that I was telling you about. The soundtrack cover is quite a bit different, and there may have been an actual movie poster like that. But if there was a movie poster like that, I didn't really see that one per se. Didn't really see that one. The poster is a good poster. It's very memorable. If you look at the poster and you think this is the kind of movie that I like the poster, and you haven't seen the movie, you're going to like it. I mean, it tells you everything you need to know. It's not being mysterious, but it's not being, it. I don't want. Maybe I misspoke. Maybe it doesn't tell you everything that you need to know. But you've got the barrel of the gun. You've got the bar in the background with the bats flying out. You've got the smoking gun held by George Clooney. You've got the gun raised, ready to use by Richard in the background, and you kind of get the idea of what's going on. Now, there have been different covers and movie posters and stuff different over the years, but the original one and the one that I see the most is still one of the best. It is still one of the best posters, and it represents everything. Like I said, it represents the film 100%. Here's the blasters again. Now, there is a, you won't hear it tonight, but there is a, stay cool, you be cool. Something like that. And it's by George Clooney, and it's going to be accompanying with the opening of the Other People's show at certain times in the future, as it was the Midnight Mutants radio show open, my previous radio show open from the past. But that was kind of like a little homage to From Dusk Till Dawn as well. From Dusk Till Dawn, what more can I say that I haven't already said? You should stream this movie and see what you think about it. If you haven't, leave me a review after you've watched it. If you do not like this movie, message me. Let's discuss it. If you like this movie, please send a message, share, like, and subscribe. Let's start a discussion about the film. I know it's a popular cult favorite out there. It achieved marginalized success upon release. It's only grown as the years have grown, as Quentin Tarantino has maintained to stay on top of the entertainment industry with his writing and directing. And Robert Rodriguez, although not at the same level that he was, he's continued to constantly put out things as well. From Dusk Till Dawn is fun from beginning to end, from middle to front to back. The characters are original, they're intriguing, and you get to root for the bad guy, and kind of. So yeah, I would definitely check it out. I think I have it on DVD, but I went ahead and rented it on Vudu again to watch more of a HD version. But yeah, this was From Dusk Till Dawn. Please check it out. Now, next week we're going to be going all the way back to 2004. This was 1996. So we're moving up in the order from this week to next week's movie, but still going back 20 years. And that's hard to believe that it's been 20 years since this film came out that we're doing next week. I'm going to be talking about and discussing one of my favorite films, but a film that I don't watch in an extreme amount due to the mood that it puts me in. It is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. be diving into that. I wanted to dive into a Jim Carrey film. I wasn't sure what. I juggled between The Cable Guy, which was also a 1996 film, or Eternal Sunshine. I even flirted with Man on the Moon. But I was afraid that would be too like niche. Might do that one in the future. So next week on Real Talk, we're going to be getting into the 2004, and it's kind of a sci-fi film. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, if you think about it, it is a little bit of a sci-fi movie. So we're going to be diving into that. Once again, thank you for tuning in tonight to Real Talk. Please go on the social media pages, which is the Spotify, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook page. The Dark Place airs Thursdays at 10 o'clock. If you want to watch live, you can watch that live on Facebook. And we'll be back in just a few moments with the Other People's Show on 92.5 WLSD, The Vault.